I am a three-time convicted felon. I've spent years behind bars for the crimes that I committed as a drug addict with an Ivy League education. We have a real dearth of mentorship within the Black community, the Black male community. We have a problem with Black men not being there. I was in prison with them. I know we weren't there. I can do life. I'm not afraid of life. And most importantly, I'm not afraid of me. I'm not in an inimical or an adversarial relationship with self. I'm not.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Social Skills Coaching, where you become more confident, more charismatic, and more productive. We're excited again to introduce a guest with us today. We have Ken Miller, author, speaker, entrepreneur, businessman, a long list of characteristics and adjectives that we could put in there. But Ken, as is the case usually, I'm going to ask you just to introduce yourself, present to us what we would like to know, what you would like us to know about you, and we'll take the conversation from there.
Sure. I appreciate that. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast. Let's start off with this. I'm 62 years old. I'm a Black male. I live in Bellingham, Washington. And I have a somewhat unique story as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, but it's nothing that is so unique that it probably will not resonate with many of the people that are on this call. So let me give you a quick overview of who I am and maybe what makes my story unique. Again, I'm 62 years old, born in 1962 in New York. My mother was a white teenage runaway. My dad was a Black male, of course, pimp and drug dealer in New York City. I was put up for adoption at birth, and for the next 6 years, I went through foster home. So I'm what they would call a foster child. I was adopted at age 6 by Irene and Sam Miller. I moved from New York to Alaska. That's where I grew up. A lot of people know me as Ken from Alaska. And I was precocious. What I mean by that, I was academically inclined. And by the time I was 17, I was a National Merit Scholar. I was accepted to Harvard. I went to Dartmouth College. While in Dartmouth, I had a major. I majored in drinking, is what I did, in fraternity, and probably minored in drinking and majored in fraternity. And I got out with my degree and went into the corporate world in 1984. Within 2 years, you could pretty much say I was homeless on the streets as a drug addict and alcoholic. I was to spend the next 20 years, 21 years, homeless and on the streets. I am a three-time convicted felon. I've spent years behind bars for the crimes that I committed as a drug addict with an Ivy League education. I got out in 2007 for my last stint in the penitentiary, did 3 years on my last bit, and had no skills, none whatsoever. But within 2 to 3 years, I was working in the field of development, which is fundraising for nonprofits. And in 2014, started my first company. And today I'm a very successful businessman, entrepreneur. I speak all over the country. I write books. I'm a landowner. I have property in South America. And I am also a husband, grandfather, and a mentor to predominantly men of color throughout this country. That's just a real quick overview. There was a lot that happened in between.
What do they say on your, not yours, your in the general sense, on your tombstone, you have for you and I, it would be 1962, born the same year, and then hopefully 21 something for both of us. Maybe it'll be a little while before that last number is filled in, but that dash represents a lot of stuff going on in between the first year and the last year. You mentioned on a personal side here, you mentioned before we started recording that you just flew in from Ecuador, and then you said you're a landowner in South America. So that's interesting to me. How does that come about? What does that entail? Is that just personal, or is that a business venture?
Business, you can say it's a business because we rent it out. So I originally, about 4 years ago, went down there, bought a condo. And then about 3 years ago, my wife and I bought some raw land on the beach, and we built a 6-bedroom home with swimming pool on the beach there in Ecuador. So we just went back there and stayed in our place. But we have a B&B down there. There's a company called Rent in Manta. So we work with them. and they take care of it, but we rent it out and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. The property itself. And then we also have the condo down there and we rent that out. So that's
Wow.
South America. It's
Um,
Ecuador.
what is Here's a naive question, maybe.
Mhm.
I've been to Mexico briefly a long time ago. What is Ecuador like? I think we have concepts of other countries. As I speak maybe broadly as an American. We don't know much sometimes. America's so large. We go from state to state, and that can be culture change. Is Ecuador similar? Is it vastly different, maybe from the States or from other South American countries that we might think we know something about? Or is life there basically the same as it is here?
Life is basically the same everywhere in the world. People are
Thank
trying to
you.
support their families. People are trying to get ahead, those that choose to do that. The truth is that the human condition entails assuming roles and or behavior that hopefully will be positive for whatever your dream or aspiration is. We call it a third world. It's on the equator. They use American money, which is
Oh,
unusual, but I think it's one of 4 countries in the world that use American money. Obviously, it's Spanish speaking, beautiful people. It's a beautiful country. But it has its problems like every country that I know of. And it's going through some growing pains as we speak, but there's great opportunity. I tell people Ecuador is Costa Rica 40 years ago when it comes to buying property and or building there. They have a large expat community, Canadians,
hmm,
Germans, Americans. And again, most of the time, right, many of us are on the coast, but there's quite a few people in Quito and Guayaquil. Those are two of the other main large cities. We're right south of Manta in a small town called Santa Marinita. So it's a beautiful country. We were just there for 8 days, wasn't long enough. It's
nice.
very economical and the food's great.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. That's just really out of personal curiosity. One of the things you mentioned was your book. Let's go into
Mhm.
that a little bit. Tell us about your book, who it's written for, what it covers, what we can learn from it, and so forth, if you would.
Who is written for? The number one person who was written for was me.
Okay. Yeah, no,
And
I
you
understand
say,
that.
why do you say that? The reason I say that is I had made a commitment to myself 5 or 6 years ago to write a book. And it took me 3 years to write this book for different reasons, but it took 3 years to get it published. I'm going to publish hopefully 3 more books this year, and it'll take me 4 or 5 months to publish those books. But I had made commitments to people. I have a big thing about integrity. And I had said verbally that I would write a book because people kept saying, "You need to write a book. You need to write a book. You need to write a book." And I'm like, okay, I'm going to write a book. And so that was probably the number one. The number two is it's a message to individuals. I hate to bifurcate or make things male or female, but it's in a lot of ways is really to men because I had a lot of situations as a man that I needed to deal with. And I talk about those in the book. There was some shame based behavior. There were some things I had to overcome. There was concepts of resilience, concepts of respect, concepts of dealing with shame and anger and depression, drug addiction, things that I needed to overcome and things that I needed to be able to do to put into my business to be successful as a businessman, which I am today. So it's a book that I'm so glad I wrote, and I think it has resonated. I've talked to more than a few people who have read it and have enjoyed the book, and I just look forward. And I just think it's a value added to the community at large. And I'm not saying it's a game changer, but it's a value add because one thing, and you'll see this, Russell. I am very honest. I am very transparent. I have no secrets. I have no secrets. There's things I will not share about my family, but about me, I'll share about anything that's happened to me because I had to take away the power of the negative secret. And that's a big part of the book, is taking away the power of the negative secret.
That's an interesting phrase. I'm jotting that down
Yeah, sure.
because but would you go into, I think I know, I certainly know personally what that means in my own instance, but tell us about that. How does that affect your daily life? How do you incorporate that? What lessons have you learned through that process? That's just a great phrase, power of a negative secret.
So let's talk about the negative secret, because I don't probably incorporate it every day in my life because I don't have to talk about things that at one time were a negative secret. So a negative secret is something that you hide from others or from the external world. Sometimes you hide it from the internal in your head. You don't go in. This is the description I give. Life consists, or memory consists of a long hallway. And on this long hallway, there are doors. And those doors said 8 years old, 13 years old, my uncle, the stepdad, whatever it may be. And it's labeled on that door. And you don't want to go into that door. You don't want to bring up those memories. You don't want to go in there and turn the lights on and see what's in that room. Okay. And so that's an internal. So we sometimes we use the word repression, but we sublimate that memory coming up into the consciousness. Okay, cool. Then there's the negative secret that deals with the external world. And what usually the self-talk around it, I'm really big on self-talk, is that if they knew this truth or this fact or this experience or my interpretation of this experience, they would not like me. They would not engage with me. They would treat me in a specific or certain way. And therefore, I cannot allow this external world to know about this truth, because that's what it is. It's a secret, but it's a truth. At least that's what you interpret it as, a truth. This happened to me, or I did this. And if you knew this, you would not involve with me or integrate with me or connect with me. Therefore, it will cause repercussions either emotionally and sometimes physically to me.
So a negative secret, it could be truth. You mentioned an internal interpretation of something, but why is it important to address that? Does it affect relationships? Does it affect just my
Sure.
personal self-concept, or is it all encompassing?
Number one, it affects your self-esteem because you're always running around in fear of them
Okay.
finding out, fear of it slipping out, fear of another external party telling this group that Ken did this, I did that. Okay. It's fear of bringing it up into my consciousness. And
Hmm.
therefore, I need to deal with that negative feeling. So, what I talk a lot about is shame based versus
It's
guilt based.
interesting. Yeah, that's one of the phrases I wanted to come back to because you mentioned it, but that caught my ear. Tell us. Yeah, please continue. Sorry for the interruption.
So, the real quick and dirty version is guilt said I did, shame says I am. Okay. One says that I did something less than, the other one says I am less than. Okay.
Mm.
And when you become shame based, it's much more powerful than guilt based. I am guilty. I pled guilty every time I went in front of the court. Every time. I had 3 felonies. I pled guilty. I was guilty. I knew I did it. I'm going to fight it. Get me to prison. Let's move on. Okay, shame says I am less than because I engaged or did this behavior. We have the Scarlet Letter, Nathaniel Hawthorne. That had to do with adultery, which was shame based by that society. I had shame based behavior because, to be frank with you, I was a male sex worker on the streets. That's how I paid for my crack on many occasions. And I didn't want anybody to find that out because it would have affected me on the streets. It would have affected me in prison. And then I thought people would not like me. And I'm talking about the external, we call it the civilian world, would not like me or engage with me if they knew I had engaged in this behavior. Not at all. And when I started speaking about it, originally I spoke to one person, then I did small group, and then I'd speak on the stages about shame-based behavior and the things that I did that made me feel less than.
Guilt and remorse are things that we feel based on our behaviors, our actions, even our thought processes. But guilt and remorse are not shame. It's two different things. And yeah, what I did is not what I am. That's a concept that
Right.
comes across in the podcast frequently. Is age an issue, either positive or negative, when developing a mentoring or even a friendship? And is there a benefit for younger people, so let's say college, early career age people, to seek advice from the boomers and those older than them?
100%. There is tremendous benefit. I am the biggest advocate of mentoring that you'll probably ever have. I've been mentoring for over 15 years and I teach classes on mentoring. I'm writing a book on mentoring within communities of color. That's my third book that's coming out this year. Fourth book, excuse me. So I know a lot about it. I've been doing it. I understand it. And it is important most of the time for the mentor to be older than the mentee. Most of the time. There's very few binaries where it just has to be one way or the
Of course.
other. But I don't deal with exceptions. I don't. That's noise to me. What is the signal? And the signal is an individual, and this is the key part, it's not age, it's maturity. But usually that comes with age or can come with age. Make sure we understand this. We're
Yes.
talking about maturity and we're talking about discernment, the ability to discern, which comes literally after maturity. That's even a higher level is discernment. Okay. But what is maturity? I always talk, and I work with a lot of men, and when I speak with them, I talk about antithesis. And what we mean, what are opposites? It's so much easier to define immaturity than there is to define maturity. And when my men have difficulty with this term, I say, how does a 4-year-old think? And the way a 4-year-old thinks is it's always about me, because that's my world. And my time horizon is very short. A 4-year-old is not thinking about what he's going to do when he's 12. He's not thinking about what type of job he's going to get when he's 30. He's not.
There's no 5-year plan there, right?
There's no 5-year plan. Yeah, their time horizon. And as you get mature, two things happen. And there's more, but let's just talk about the two. One is you begin to make decisions based on how they impact others. Okay. And then number two, you extend your time horizon. I will make decisions. I will delay gratification. I will accept discomfort short term for the long term goal, which is to provide dot, 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 or be at a certain level at this age, or whatever it may be, the aspiration may be, or the goal, or the dream. I talk a lot about dreams. So anyway, that is one of the reasons why usually the mentor, but I hate to tell you, Russell, most people don't know how to mentor. I'll just be frank on that. 'Cause I'm gonna be frank. That's just who I am. And people can agree, disagree, whatever. But to be frank with most people don't know how to mentor. They don't understand what mentoring is. And they also get it mixed up with coaching all the time.
Can you keep going? My follow-up question would be
Sure.
along those lines. Tell us, coaching, mentoring,
Mhm.
if how would an individual listening today find a mentor? How would they know that they're getting what they need? If it's someone of a higher level of maturity, how should they, yeah, a lot of questions there. How would someone go
Yeah.
about being a mentor and
Ooh,
knowing that they're
good question.
doing it? Yeah, that's probably 2 or 3 episodes in itself, but
Right.
yeah, delve into that a little bit more for us.
So let's start with this. Let me give you an example of how do I mentor. I've been mentoring for 15
Please.
years. I've probably
Great.
mentored over 60 men, 95% of them Black men of color and of choice. I don't mentor women. That's number one. And that's difficult for women. I want women who are on this. It's difficult many times to find a mentor within the same sex if you're aspiring to a position and or stature within a community, a work community, because a lot of times the women haven't reached that level that I want to be the CEO or I want to be the CDO, whatever it may be, CFO of a larger corporation. I'm looking for a mentor to help me on that journey. Okay, having said that, number one thing as a mentor is I have a responsibility. First of all, mentoring 100% is free, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. Coaching is a paid, or you could quote unquote coach someone for free, but coaching usually has remuneration involved with it. There's pay involved. Okay, I coach and I've mentored. The number one thing that I do as a mentor is this: I engender dreams. Let me say that again. I engender dreams. The first thing that I say to the individual is that number one, because they almost always come to me or a family member say, hey, will you mentor my nephew, whatever it may be. I sit down with them. I say, hey, check this out. I am the mentor. You are the mentee. Let's understand that. Are you comfortable with that? I take lead in this. I'm the mentor. I've been there. I've done that. And if I don't, I probably know who has. I can get that information. Okay, I say that number one. Number two, I look them dead in the eyes, or I look them in the eyes, and I say very simply, my goal is to engender your dreams. What are your dreams? And I shut up. And I shut up. That's real important. And I've had guys sit there for 5 minutes because someone has taken away their ability to dream. They said, you can't dream. You can't do that. You can't have that. You'll never be that. Could be family, could be principal, could be a teacher, could be most of the time, many times, it's their colleagues and or friends. Sometimes it's your mate or your partner, but it's taken away your ability to dream. So I put that on the table, and I've always been able to. And then I say to them, there's three things that I will predominantly do. Number one, I'm going to provide information. And I start every man that I work with, and people can do this differently, but I start every man I work with 2 books, period. They have to read these 2 books. And many of them are not readers, but we work through it. And the 2 books are The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden and The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. And then I will put in front of them other books or podcasts or talks, other information as I get to know them better and get more drilled in their aspiration and dream. That's number one. Number two, so I'm going to put information, external information into you. Number two, I'm going to introduce you to people, okay? Because I know a lot of people, So I'm going to introduce you to people. Number three, I'm going to support you on your journey. And many times that means you need to go to a conference. How much is it? What do you want? I'll take care of either the airfare. This is what I do. Not every mentor does this. I spend thousands a year supporting guys doing things that will enhance their ability to be successful. And number four, which is probably the most important, is I support men emotionally. Every man, every guy I mentor, I've told them I love you. I love you, bro. I love you, man. And I look them dead in the eye. This is 2 black men. Sometimes we've come from some tough backgrounds. And and so a lot of times, and I tell them this in the first meeting or first 1 or 2 meetings, I say, hey, it may take time for the trust to build. Some people quick and they default to trust. That's a term I use. That's what I do. And some don't. And that's fine. And it may have taken 2 years to get to a point where they're comfortable with it, saying, hey, I love you. You know that, right? Yeah. And they tell me back. And but I support it emotionally because we deal with what I call the vicissitudes of life. That's common now. That's common. You will have ups and downs. People will pass away. Relationships will be broken. Financial problems will happen. Family issues will happen. Health issues will happen. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Because a lot of times they come in and they say, oh, can you help me with my business? Help me with my career. That's what they come in. And I've been mentoring. In fact, I meet with one of my oldest mentee today, 15 years. It's open-ended too. I tell them that. It's open-ended. We meet quarterly, but you could always contact me in between. I got one who's going to be contacting me back in the office now, today. I was on vacation. I said, hey, can't deal with it right now, but give me a ring when I get back on Tuesday and let's talk. Let's deal with this. So that's mentoring. There's more that I've done, but this is the beautiful thing. And I want to share this with you. People say, why do you do this? Because, yeah, I'll just put it, I'm a millionaire. Okay. I'm a millionaire. I built my companies. I built myself. I'm a millionaire. My time is valuable. And even this, I don't obviously get paid to be on this podcast, but it gives me an opportunity to share that hopefully will affect people. I'm so
Right.
grateful of my journey. But the key thing is what I want to come back to is that I give of my time because I sometimes believe that's we call my calling. And I'm not going into Judeo-Christian talk here because I'm not. But what I'm talking about is I have a spiritual presence in my life that allows me to give back, and I don't want anything in return. What I want is this. I've sat down with two men that I've worked with for years, and to watch a grown Black man cry because a dream came true took 5 years, took 7 years, but something they didn't know they had inside them. And I always say, and they're like, thank you. I couldn't have done it without. It's not whether you could have done it without me. We did it together, but you did it. This is about you and that dream coming true. This is about you. And I just honor it. And I just wish you continue. What's our new dream?
Do you approach it in the beginning as I'm your friend, I'm going to help you through this, or is it more of a instructional thing? And I'm assuming by the end of the time, after you spent sessions with people, you become much more, you become more close, you become more friendly. But in the beginning, what's it like? Is it more of a professional relationship, or is it more of a personal? Or
Personal
is it
from the
really okay?
beginning, from
Okay.
the jump. And I'll say that because one of the things I always say to them, first of all, I want to thank you and honor your ability to reach out. And just because a lot of times I'll have the first meeting to see, do you want to be mentored? What are you looking for? Are you looking for coaching on a specific, how to write a donor letter? Because my background's fundraising. I'm an expert in
Okay.
fundraising. Okay. If that's what you're looking at, I can tell you that in half hour. You can come to one of my webinars, or I'll give you allowance to be in one of my webinars for free. One of my workshops. I don't care. That's fine. But or do you want to grow as a man? Because that's what it really comes down to. Do you want to grow as a man? Do you want to be mentored? Now you got to understand something here, Russell. I just want to make sure you understand. I have mentors. I had three. I have
Mm.
three. I had four. One passed away. Okay. But I have mentors. I have four generations of Black men mentoring. That was my whole, that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. One of the reasons why I spoke is I want more men to work with other men. We have a real dearth of mentorship within the Black community, the Black male community. We have a problem with Black men not being there. I was in prison with them. I know we weren't there. I had your stepson. I wasn't a father to because I'm a drug addict and I'm in the penitentiary. So I know what it's like to not have that father figure or a good Black male role model. And I use the term Black, it could be communities of color, it can be just men. We're all children of God. I truly believe that. We're all a part of the community of the world. But I have a specific community because I know the need is so great in that community. And so my goal is to speak in front of thousands to hopefully inspire them to bring in the spirit that they will be motivated to work with others, or especially to learn how to work with others. That's one of the reasons why I'm writing the book. Because again, there needs to be a guidebook, and there may be another one out there. I haven't done that kind of research and won't. I just know what has worked for me. How do you know it's worked? Because I've seen the growth and I see the responses from those who have engaged in the relationship with me to grow and to mature. Okay. And believe me, I course correct too, Russell. I course correct. which means there are times I've sat with men and I said, I'm not co-signing on that. I'm not
Mm.
co-signing on that behavior. That is not the right thing to do. And I'll explain why, and we'll go through. If you're having an extramarital affair, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the why. Let's talk about, and nothing is off. I have no secrets. So nothing is off. And they know my story. All my guys know.
And you expect that back from them, the no secrets, the transparency, the honesty? No?
No, not in the beginning.
Okay.
But I tell them that. I just tell them two things. All I ask is two things: to show up, and that's a tough one many times. Okay, to show up and show up on time, and two, to be as honest as you can. That's all I ask for. Okay, and many times we don't really have the habit of being as forthcoming as possible, or, and I'll be frank, in the communities of color, we have a problem with being late. I'm gonna put that out there. I have a black men's book study, national, that I run. Okay, started it. It's called the Six Pillars, Black Men's Book Study, and we have individuals who are part of the book study. It doesn't cost anything. Okay, and I can't tell you how many times individuals have told me they'll be there, they no show, or they come in late. Happens all the time, and I don't have the answer for it. Some of it's community, and there's some theories I have, because that's not me, who I am. But I teach this about punctuality. I teach about, and one of the most important things I teach is integrity. Is there an alignment, or what we call congruence, between what you say and what you do?
Wow. That's strong.
Yeah, it is strong.
Yeah.
It is strong, because if you got it, because it comes back to the book, The Speed of Trust. What is trust, Russell? This is how I work with my guys. And I know I'm not here, I'm not mentoring you, but what is trust? I do a lot with definitions. What is trust?
Are you asking? You're not
Yes.
asking rhetorically,
Yeah,
are you?
just real quick. What is trust?
I don't know if I can define it, and I could maybe an example. If I trusted
Yeah.
you, I would believe that you're working for. If we're working together, you're working with my best interest in mind, like almost like a fiduciary arrangement, where I can believe what you're telling me because it is not couched behind some secret or some ulterior motive that I'm not aware of or might not be to my benefit.
All right. Let's take away motives. Let's take away ulterior benefits, things of that nature. Let's keep it real simple. Trust is a belief in a perceived future action. Let me say it again. Trust
Say it
is
again.
a belief in a perceived future action. If I come to you and say, hey, I'm going to go to the store and grab you a soda, I believe that your future action is that you're going to go to the store and buy me a soda. I trust you. When we do our marriage vows, one of the part of the marriage vows is that I will not engage in physical or sexual endeavors with another person outside the marriage. Trust. So I believe, same thing with my wife, there is a belief in a perceived future action that the only person that I will engage with in physical is my wife. Okay, cool. That's trust. And so, if you verbalize something and then on the back end don't do it, that mislays my trust, because I had a perceived future action that you were going to show up for the podcast on time. You had one. Okay. And when that doesn't happen, it gives me credence that there is not integrity and or. Now there's reasons things happen. I'm so amenable to that, understandable that. And a lot of times, I just ask people to let me know. If you can't make, just let me know. If you saw my calendar, I have a VA that handles my calendar, but if you saw my calendar, you'd understand that, again, my time is valuable. I trust that you will. And I default to trust. That's another term. It's called default to trust. I do by nature. I've chosen, not even by
Mm.
nature, by experience and by belief in that good in the end will happen. I just default to trust.
It's almost too much for me to get I want to jot down default to trust is in what was you said earlier,
Mm.
Speed to trust, was that?
Yeah. The speed of trust.
Speed of trust. Can you
Yeah, but
expand?
even
What do you mean by that?
first of all, you have to undefine, again, we've defined somewhat. What is trust? A belief in a perceived future action. Okay. How quickly can you engender trust with
Oh,
people?
okay.
Okay. Because when the CEO or the boss trusts you, they have a perception that you will do these actions that are going to be positive for the company. Therefore, they will give you more responsibility. Therefore, they will give you, this is just in the corporate world. How quickly can you build trust with your partner or whatever, your partner? How quickly can you build that? And then what can you do when and if you do something that takes away their belief in or their trust in you?
Okay.
Okay. And we
Yeah.
got to make amends. We can make apologies, which are different. We can
Right.
engage, but specifically, I tell people those are verbal, okay? Especially their apologies. So you need to do a series of actions that show that you can trust me. And how do we do that?
Which is directly tied into integrity. Without integrity, can
Yeah,
there be
yeah.
trust?
Without integrity, can there be trust? It'd be difficult. Remember,
Maybe.
this is the difficulty: is that most people have what are called situational ethics.
Right.
So with certain people, there's a tremendous amount of trust. With other people, other situations, which means it's because we have situational ethics. I'm very ethical with my mother, let's say, but with a partner that I play basketball with, I may or may not show up on time. Okay. But if my mom calls me, I'll be there in 5 minutes.
You're gonna.
Okay. Situational ethic. And what we want to do is at some point, when we have this true integrity, is that there's no situational ethics. There is just ethics. And there is a sense that I adhere to what I say or what I tell people that I'm going to do, by whatever external means, whether it's written or verbal.
Thank you. Yeah. You've given us, I think, a little insight into what you cover in some of your speeches and your
Mhm,
talks.
mhm,
I'm
mhm.
interested in maybe lightening things up a little bit as well. Tell us
Sure.
about the lecture circuit. What's it like? How do people book you? How can people find where you're going to be speaking? Just is it like it's not the rock star life, I don't assume, but it has to be gratifying. Just what is that as a lecture circuit speaker?
So, first of all, to understand it's a world in itself. I love to use the term community. So, I belong to different communities. Okay. And within those communities, I have a certain stature. Okay. That goes back to respect, which we may or may not talk about. But the speaking community is very large. There are individuals at the top of the pyramid, and there's individuals that are at the base of the pyramid. And so let's say this, there's approximately 8,000 conferences, associations, and groups that you could speak at. And to speak, man, there's a lot to it. I could talk about this for next day. It would just say this. They're what you think, which are what we call keynotes or plenaries. Those are the individuals that come on stage and speak to the whole group usually, or the great majority. And then are called breakout sessions.
Okay.
And I do a lot of breakouts. I do plenaries. I
Okay.
do keynotes. But your large speakers, the big ones, the most well known, your Les Browns and your Zig Ziglars and Tommy Hopkins, whoever, they do the keynotes. Michelle Obama, Hillary Rodham Clinton, they're all do the keynotes, and they can get paid half a per keynote. I'm nowhere near that.
Not yet.
Not yet, and I probably don't want to be. I don't
Interesting.
aspire that. No, I aspire for that. But what I do is what it consists of is responding to RFPs to speak, or they reach out to you, or you have an agent. I don't have an agent or belong to an agency. I probably never will. and they will look at your request to speak as a request for proposal. They'll look at your proposal, they'll look at the other ones, and they'll make a decision whether or not they want to bring you on. So usually you have what is called a keynote. So mine is resilience in the face of the known and the unknown because they are different. So I speak on that's my keynote. And then I have a bunch of breakouts that I can do on trust, on fundraising skills. I do one self esteem. I do one on coaching, things of that nature. So those are breakouts. And so what you do is there's only two ways to do them: in person or online, or you call it hybrid, but let's call that online. And I go around the country when I so choose or when I'm asked to speak. And I fly in, I do my talk, and I fly out. But I'm a little different. I'm not a little different. I'm somewhat different that I'm very much into the people. So a lot of times I spend most of my time after I talk meeting people and just talking with them one on one. Just talking with them one on one. Where you at? Male or female? But I won't mentor you if you're a female, but I'll speak with you at the talk because people will come up and want to talk about shame. They want to
Mm.
talk about bouncing back from a death. They want to talk about whatever some of the things that I may have spoken about in my conversation. Because what they, depending on, again, the client, I can be more honest depending on the audience. What I mean, I can be more forthcoming because there's certain things I cannot talk about depending on the client. And I won't. I respect that. I'm not here to shock people, but there's some places where I talk where it's down and dirty. When I go
You're
into
like,
prisons, yeah, or I go into youth prisons and I'll speak, or I'm talking
mm,
with a group of ex-addicts. We're gonna keep it real. And I'm gonna go down just like that. My voice will change. We're gonna keep it real. Let's chop it up. This is what happened. And then I can talk to them because that'll resonate with them. I talk to the audience. It's always about the audience. And then it's because I'm talking to the show host or the individual event coordinator. What do you want? Because that's what I'm here. You're paying me. What do you want? It's not about that's my self-esteem or patting myself on the back. I made a great talk and shocked a bunch of people. It's not what I'm about. I'm about how can I be a value added to your audience?
what are some of the people that you've associated with? You mentioned several names. Have you worked with or been in presentations where Zig Ziglar, I don't know, is he still touring? Where some of those,
God, even a lot. I
I
grew
don't know.
in the 80s.
Yeah.
We had these famous, and it wasn't even speakers, they were famous business. I grew up in the Tommy Hopkins, Zig Ziglar. Who's the one that walks on the hot rocks? He's still doing his thing.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't remember the name, but I
Yeah.
remember the
I mean,
concept. Yeah.
yeah, and it'll come to me, of course, once we get off the podcast. I personally haven't. I am writing a book, which is going to be phenomenal. And I just claim it, okay? Because I expect excellence for me and I produce excellence. True. But I'm writing a book with a gentleman named Dr. Will Moreland, who is one of the top 10 inspirational speakers in the world. And we're writing a book on respect, on the topic of respect, because it's one of the most important topics in communities of color. Because I've known more people to get hurt over that word. People think it's over drugs, money, or sex. It's over respect.
Mm.
That's just a manifestation of your disrespect to me. And therefore, I have
Wow.
a talk. I have some self talk and I have a script I have to play out if you disrespect me. And that can also go into the corporate boardroom. It can go into in relations, marriages, where the wife disrespects or the man disrespects the wife, whatever it may be, and causes. So we're writing a whole book on that. Anyway, that's Dr. Will Moreland that I'll be writing that book with. I've met a lot of especially in the community. So again, I'm sometimes very specific to the Black community. I know some of the larger speakers, more famous, because I belong to a group called National Speakers Association. Just came back from their conference. We have 2,000, 3,000 people at the conference. We're all speakers. We're all speakers. And we're
Wow.
learning how to be better speakers, or many times to be inspired to be to stay in the field. It's not an easy field for many people. I don't need the money, so I'm real fortunate. Many people are in there as their
To make a
career,
living.
make a living. That's not how I make my living, and that's not why I'm in the field. But I still respect it tremendously, the field and those individuals standing on the shoulders of giants. And there are giants within our field, and they are very good. There's a skill set to speaking. But the
Sure.
other thing is, there's two aspects I always talk about in the speaking world. And the two aspects is the business of speaking and then the art of and science of speaking, stagecraft, we'll call it. But a lot of people are great speakers, but they are poor business people.
That opens up a lot of possibility too. We're coming in on an hour, and I want
Mhm.
have to be
Mhm.
careful of our time. So, if you have anything you want to, a way to contact you, information, where they can hear you, where they can find you, where they can contact you about being a mentor, if you'll give us a little rundown there on those two things, however that comes to your mind, skip whatever you don't want to answer in there and move on to something else is fine. And then give us a word of advice that you might want to leave in our listeners' ear, and we'll close it out after that.
Okay. So I'm a very ordered person, very ordered. I'm looking around my desk right now. I have two computer screens. I got my Shure microphone. I have my ring light for the podcast. But all I have is one pen in my office, one pen. I have one docket, 8.5 by 11 pad. Every day I come in, I make my list. I date it, what day it is. I give myself a word of inspiration. Mine today is focus because I'm just back in from vacation. I put my start time and I make my list. I start my day that way. I run 5 businesses, 5. I have assistants, okay, the VAs. In fact, one of my companies is offshore virtual assistants that are trained in AI. I am big into AI. That's a whole another podcast, and I've done those.
Right.
I work out 4 days a week. I used to be a power lifter, but those days are gone. You have to do something in the penitentiary. I, man, how am I going to put this? I don't pray a lot. Let me put that preface to that. But I have the ability to go into prayer quickly. I have a whole talk I do on what I call gap control. And I just want to go into that just real quick to understand why when I come to the prayer. Gap control is one of the most important skills, especially for men. You say, why does it have to be for men? Because we are violent by nature. We are violent by nature. All over the history of this world as humans, males are violent. Okay, I'm not going to go into why the evolutionary biology, but we are. Having said that, and remember I talk a lot about respect and disrespect, we have input that comes in through our senses. Most of the time we hear it, or it can be a touch, or somebody stepped on our toe in the club or the disco, and we have a reaction instead of an action because you've disrespected me. Let's go back to respect. Respect is acknowledgement of a person's position or stature within a community. Acknowledgement of a person's position or stature within the community. Community of the family, community of the corporation, community of the streets, community of the penitentiary, but there's a community. And I have a position within that community. And if you do not acknowledge it, we have repercussions.
Mm.
Okay, we're in a disrespect mode and understand disrespect. And we're taught this, especially as Black men from early age. Don't ever let anybody disrespect you. Okay. So the input comes in. Can you create a gap so that it is not a reaction, but it comes an action? And so, what I've learned to do, because I did not have this, and I talk to a lot of men and work on this, is now instead of reacting, I act. I get the input and I go into the cognitive part because I don't want to go back into the amygdala and go into some of the more primitive parts of the brain and use emotion to make a decision. Do not use emotion predominantly to make decisions. Okay. It can be great to inspire. I'm not going to go there. But so anyway, so I've learned to create that gap control. And now I try to. So why do I bring this up in this talk? Is because I want to get to a point where we have what's called the 11th step in the programs, in the anonymous programs, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will, which is His will is the next indicated correct thing to do, and the power to carry that out. So I pray when I have input come in that I know from my experience and my maturity that there's a tendency I want to react, usually verbally, which is to threaten you. And then many times in the past, it's been physical. But I haven't touched anybody. We call it touched. I haven't touched anybody in 21 years. I've been sober for 21 years, and I have not put hands on anyone. So I don't pray that often, but when I do, it's for good reason, because my will is in alignment with God's will. I do a succession of good things. I do. I'm not trying to pat myself. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I do. I'm just a nice guy. One of the things that I heard in 1997 was a gentleman talking a meeting, anonymous programs, and he said, I am a kind and gentle man. And I almost fell out of my chair because I was on the streets trying to get sober. And I had never heard a man say that he was kind and gentle. I still remember it. And I am today a kind and gentle man. And so that's who I want to become. And I've become that person. So anyway, I go into prayer. I'm very organized. Order is probably one of my favorite words or concepts. And that's one of the things that I do is I bring order from disorder. And a lot of times there's disorder in the head and of course in our physical, but I at least have, remember I said my word today was focus. I have very little distractions. So I am focused. I control my environment. You can read any of the habit books where James Clear talks quite a bit about it. That great books too. Big fan of habits because I've had them good and bad, but I've had them. So anyway, that's what I do to organize my day. I try to eat well. I try to balance, not even try. And that's changed in the last couple of years. I'm so much more into family. I married into a family and I have the grandkids who I love to death. You can see my smile come on my face. I get to see one of them today, which I'm super excited because we've been gone for a
Right.
week and a half. That's what I do. I make the list. It's probably the key component. And I stay focused. I try not to get too distracted. I work out. I try to eat well. And I just try to love on people. And in return, I've been blessed. I have a beautiful life. Beautiful life. Okay. So that is question number one. Okay. And then question number two is words of wisdom or what I want to leave people.
Is there something you want to touch on that we haven't mentioned?
Sure. There's two things. Number one, if you would like to learn more about me or hear me speak more on this, go to my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel, Ken Miller
Great.
is a very good one. And then you can also go to kenmillerspeaks.com. And I love to speak. I hate to say it, but I speak a lot of times for free. I just want to give back. I had a chance to talk to SHRM, which is Society of HR Managers, flew up on my dollar and dime because they wanted to talk about hiring ex-convicts. And I'm like, if this helps to help an individual get a chance
Right.
to work within and work with these HR managers, I'll do that for free. I'll do that on my dollar. I'm blessed. I'm not worried about that part. So anyway, that's one. I have a book called Becoming Ken. It's on Amazon, audiobooks, all the above. So that's Becoming Ken. It says a black man's journey from the Ivy Leagues to the prison and back again. And then I also I have a couple other websites, but let's go with kenmillerspeaks.com. And then, of course, you can do all the social media, Instagram, I'm really big on, and then Facebook and also LinkedIn. And feel free. The other thing is, feel free to contact me, anyone who's hearing this. And I answer. Yes, I have virtual assistants, I have 4 of them, but I answer all emails and phone calls. I answer them. Okay. Or they're sent to me and I answer them. Okay. That's number one. And then maybe any words of wisdom that I'd like to leave the on. And I want to speak. So if anybody has anything about speaking, I want to speak, free or for pay. I'd love to speak. The words of wisdom: get a mentor. And the way you get a mentor is you find someone that you see something in them that you would like.
Mm.
And I'm more talking about how they walk this earth, how they carry themselves. When people see me, one of the things that they notice right away is I'm very confident. And the word isn't even competent. I'm very competent to life. I can deal with anything in life. I've dealt with deaths. I've dealt with financial. I've dealt with prison. I've dealt with suicide. I've dealt with attempted murders. I've dealt with life. I can do life. I'm not afraid of life. And most importantly, I'm not afraid of me. I'm not in an inimical or an adversarial relationship with self. I'm not. I'm not. I like me. I'm a good dude. I'm a kind and gentle man. Okay. So, number one, if you can't get a mentor, get someone outside counsel is what I call it. And the way you do that is you go up with someone and say, would you be willing or open to mentoring me? I'm looking for a mentor. Sometimes they won't, but they'll know someone and know something about you. So the number one thing is to ask is to have the courage, that courage to act. Okay. And then the other thing that I would strongly recommend is to have a dream. And the dream may be just to be a better husband. The dream may be just to be a better father or a better wife or whatever. Maybe that may be the dream, but have something to aspire to and then reward yourself along the way. Give yourself allowance to make mistakes and to bounce back. I wouldn't even have my talk if it wasn't for resilience, okay? Which is the bounce back from the setback, the comeback from the setback. Leave yourself. And then if you do, I'll leave with this one. There's 100 different ones I could talk about, but I'll
Sure.
leave with this one. If possible, engage with a spiritual entity. But I want to I'll make sure you understand what I mean by a spiritual presence. The spiritual presence has to modify behavior. Let me say that one more time because that's how important I believe this is. The spiritual entity or presence or God, whatever you may want to define it as, has to modify action and behavior. If not, it's hollow. I'm not talking about seriously. So if you are a strong Mormon and that modifies your behavior in a positive way, God bless you. If you're a strong person of the Islamic faith and it modifies your behavior or self will that is inimical or in opposition to God's will, thank you. If you are an atheist that has a concept of a certain thing that I'm going to adhere to that's based on integrity or whatever it may be, but it modifies your behavior, knock yourself out. Knock yourself out. Go for it. But it has to. So when I go into prayer, and I do it, but rarely, let me put seldom, because I don't need to. I don't have any friction. What I ask is identify what is the right thing to do here for my loved ones, for society, not what's going to give me the least amount of pain or the most pleasure, because those are the two reasons we go into self will. That's inimical or opposite of God's will. But what is going to be the right thing to do? And then once you've identified that, it doesn't take usually that long. I usually know what the right thing to do is. Give me the courage to do it. And then I go out and do it because I'm going to do it because I have a covenant like David did in the Bible. I have a covenant. I have an agreement because you've taken me through a lot. The things that I've survived physically and emotionally. I hate to say a lot of people don't survive. They don't. Here,
That's right.
they're in prison, they're dead, or they're in addiction. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today.
You.
So many strong points there. I'm looking forward to editing and hearing some of these things again. Listeners, Ken Miller, you can learn more at Ken Miller on YouTube, kenmillerspeaks.com on the internet, a book, Becoming Ken, on Amazon and Audible and other platforms there. Many ways to learn more from a man that I feel has a great deal to give and is just as importantly willing and has the courage to do. Thank you for your time, listeners. Thank you, Ken, for your time. Hope you have a great day. Welcome back. Hope you recover from vacation quickly and get right back into things. Listeners, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.